Well, hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Johnny and you're watching Hillbilly Modeling. So this is going to be part 2 of our build of ICM Standard B Liberty Series 2 World War I US Army Truck, or our Liberty truck there. And it's in 1/35th scale. And we're going to pick up where we left off in the last video, which is the we need to sand the wheels, I think, and we was working on the radiator. So let's go ahead and jump down to the bench and get back to work on this. So here we're working on the radiator, and as you can see, we are sanding. Now we use some sprue goo and some perfect plastic putty, and then some Mr. Surfacer 500 there to help fill in any of the little divots and gaps that was left over. And what we want is a nice smooth arc there across the top of our radiator, and of course the bottom tank as well. Kind of fill up those seams that ICM had in there. Next up, we have these wheels, and we need to sand off those curves there on the tread wear area. So I'm going to be using this 180 grit sanding stick to take care of that. Now I'm being careful to not sand too much in one spot. we still want our tires to be round. Now these were airless tires. They were solid, but using the 180 grit sanding stick is going to leave some scratches there, which is okay because it'll show that the tires are worn. But we do need to have these kind of flattened out there where the rubber meets the road. So we'll get those sanded up. And then when it comes to the rear wheels here, as you can see, they're already mated to one another, our duals, so it's just easier to sand those together. So going back to our instructions, let's see, we're going to start right here at the engine because we've already done our wheels now. Of course, we haven't mounted them yet, but we've got our engine block to do and the little accessories and the heads to put on, and we need to fit that to the chassis. So we'll go ahead and start working on our engine. So first up, we have our engine block and our clutch housing assembly there to put together. That's just a left and a right halve to put on. We'll cement these together first and just make sure that we get enough, to me, extra thin there to hold everything together. And once we get that cemented up, we can go ahead and move on to our front cover. So this is our front timing cover, and it also has our accessory drives on it. And we will take and cement that into place. Just want to make sure that we have good contact there. The only cleanup that I've done on these parts so far has just been to remove the sprue gates. That's it. So these parts are pretty much flash free and ready to go, so we're not having any trouble with having to do cleanup. Next up is our oil pan, and it fits fantastically if I just get it in the right spot there. There we go. And all we got to do now is cement that into place, and as you can see, this engine starts to build up rather quickly. There's not a whole lot of little parts to have to worry about, but it does have quite a bit of detail, so that's nice. So while our To Me Extra Thin is still tacky, these little edges here, try to think what to call them, where the two parts have mated together, we can just use our X-Acto knife and just kind of slice right down through that soft polystyrene where that To Me Extra Thin has softened it up, and we won't have to do any sanding or filling on that, or at least very, very, very little. So this works pretty good. It might be a method that I may use more often. Oftentimes I wait till everything's dry and I try to sand it, but I think trimming it down like this makes things go a whole lot quicker. Something to try out in your next model. So we do have our water pump to go on. That's an external water pump. And we've got the two ports on the heads. There's hoses that come off of our water pump there and goes to each head. So we'll just put that into place. And as you can see, it has a shaft that goes up to the front timing cover, which is the drive for not only that water pump, but the little bulge there towards the rear is our distributor. So next up, we have our fan belt and pulleys. We need to go ahead and put that on. Now you could leave this off for painting if you like. I just find it easier to paint it pretty much just on the engine because I don't have to worry about how I'm going to hold this thing. So I'm going to go ahead and put mine on. If you don't want to put yours on, you can leave it off. So we do have our engine heads. Now I wrote the numbers on the back of them. There's 31, and that's supposed to be for the front head. And then there is number 32, which is the head to the rear. And this is a 4-cylinder, so these cylinder heads are grouped as 2 cylinders for each. However, something doesn't look right to me. Now we do have a tube that goes on the top of these heads. It's got these 2 little brackets that it stands up on. As you can see, they don't line up. So I don't know if I have misnumbered these heads or if they're just misnumbered in the instructions where their location is. So I think we just need to switch these. I'm glad I haven't cemented them on yet, and I was paying attention when I cleaned up my parts because that would not have fit if I had glued them up the other way. So it's important to have those 2 little holes there off to the side on each one of those heads close together. All right, so I got that kind of sorted, so we can just go ahead and cement that into place. And like I say, I'm glad I didn't make the mistake of cementing those heads into place and then realize the mistake. So next up, we have, I don't know exactly what this part is, but we're gonna put it on there anyway because it's supposed to be there. And it kind of goes over to the carburetor, so I don't know what kind of tube that is. But just want to make sure that it's straight and that it's fully seated. We don't need anything keeping our intake when we go to put it on out, misaligned. So also we are going to put this short stubby drive shaft in place. And that comes out of our clutch housing. And that goes into the transmission. Now there's a lot of wiggle room here. And so what we really need to do is we need to test fit this into the chassis and get this drive shaft lined up. And it is kind of a tight fit, but it'll go. It's not that big of a problem. And all of our motor mounts, left and right in the frame rails there, is very positive. It sits exactly where it's supposed to sit. And then the front of the engine sits in a little notch right there in that front, or it's not the front cross member, but that engine support bracket. And it's actually a good fit. So I'm really surprised at the engineering there. So we're going to let this set and dry so that drive shaft has the correct alignment and the correct angle, which is actually just straight back, but we'll set that aside. So as you can see, we don't have the radiator in there, and that's no problem because that's going to be left out for painting, as well as our exhaust and intake. Now, as you can see in step 44, we glue those together, but we're going to want to detail paint those and everything, and we can't really put those in until the engine is in, and we're going to be taking the engine back out. Now, the instruction shows us right where that exhaust hooks to the frame, and that's nice. So here in 46, there's that tube, and we have a shift lever, and then of course there is the coolant tube that goes on top. So we will leave that coolant tube off, I think. Let's go ahead and put this little tube on right here that stretches out between the 2 heads. Now what this tube is supposed to do is it protects, and I guess it's more like a heat shield for our spark plug wires that you can see right here in this reference photo that I'm using to help me with my painting also. So we'll put that in, and then we'll put this shifter in here on our clutch housing and just get that pretty much lined up. I do want it vertical and straight because we got to set the cab in over top of this, and we want everything to, well, to, you know, look right. So here is that top coolant tube. It goes to the radiator. We're going to leave that off and paint that separately, but that'll go right on top of the heads there when we get around to installing it, after we have painted it, of course. And as you can see, it goes right into the center of the top of the radiator. All right, time to check our instructions again. And next up, we are going to start working on the cab. So we have our floor section, the two sides. We do have to build up our fuel tank. And that fuel tank mounts to the inside of the firewall, along with our small dash there. And of course, we have our seat frame to put in, and then we're going to fit the cushions, but I don't plan on actually cementing those into place yet. And we do have these two brackets that go on the bottom of the cab that support the steps. And yeah, we're going to leave that back out for the seat, but we are going to put our steering column together, and we'll go ahead and insert that. At least that's the plan. So let's see how we do here. So it's very easy to put this together. The way ICM has laid it out, and with their simplified instructions, you can't really go wrong here. I mean, I guess you could, but you'd have to try really hard. The fit is good. We don't have any issues there. And once again, the only cleanup that I've done has been just for the sprue gates. And I did hit the sides a little bit with the sanding stick, but you know, those edges, but it's just not a fit issue here. So everything is going together nicely. So we're going to go ahead and put together this fuel tank. I am not going to put it together the way they say it in the instructions. They want us to put the top and the bottom on the fuel tank first. As you can see, I put the top on, and then I'm going to put the sides on. And the reason why is because we really don't have a positive tab or anything for the bottom, except for that little lip that's on the inside of the sides. So it just seems to reason for me that it's just easier to insert the bottom last, so it'll have a little shelf there to sit on the ends there. So we'll just go ahead and cement this up. I mean, it's no real surprise to you guys that I'm not truly following the instructions religiously because I rarely do. But as you can see, the bottom goes in so much easier here because of those little lips that are on the sides. So I don't know why they wanted us to do it the other way, but I'm just going to do it my way. Okay, so on to the inside of our firewall. So we're going to put in the small instrument panel there, and I am just going to run just a little bit more extra thin around the edge there. And then we have our fuel cell to cement that into place. Now I'm doing this immediately after I have glued up the fuel cell, just in case there are some alignment issues. We can just press it down, and everything's still kind of movable. You know, it's not real solid yet. So we do have this bracket for our steering column we need to put in. And I imagine since nearly everything on this vehicle is fairly at 90 degrees, then that's pretty much what I want that bracket to set at too. Now for our seat frame. It looks like it's wrong, but it's not. And I'm referring to the actual seating surface. It actually slopes forward lower at the front than it is at the back. So I had to check that twice because I wasn't sure that was really what was going on. But that's the way it goes. So we'll just cement that into place. So when it comes to putting our firewall, to the front of the cab here, I am just going to soften up the polystyrene there right where it goes together. That way, hopefully we will eliminate any kind of gap issues that we may have with the cab sides there. By making that polystyrene a little bit softer, you can kind of press it together and close up any gaps. And it does fit. That's not an issue. However, we do have some slight seam lines there that we're going to have to take care of. But we'll go ahead and get this cemented up. So next up we have two brackets that go underneath the cab, one for each side of the cab there that supports and holds these steps here. So what I decided to do was go ahead and slot those legs of those brackets into the little notches there for our step, and just give it a few seconds to tack up a little bit, and then just gently push it and let it fall into that slot in the bottom of the cab. And the same thing with the opposite side. It's just a matter of a little bit of to me extra thin. And then we'll go ahead and set those legs into those notches. And once again, all you got to do is slide the base of the bracket there up underneath the cab. We'll put that right into the slots where it goes. And I will say that the instructions aren't really clear that that's where the top of those brackets go, is in those slots, but that's really the only place that they can go. So, and I did check that it fits correctly on the frame, so we're going to go with that. Next up, we have our steering column. So we need to, I don't know if this is the choke or the throttle, but I imagine it probably runs and drives pretty much the same as like a Model T would. So we'll go ahead and put this lever into place. Just make sure you check your instructions that you don't, if you put it upside down, then you're going to have it backwards. It does slot in onto the shaft, so that's not a problem. And we are going to sand it flat right there on the end of the steering shaft, because we want our steering wheel to set flat when we go to put it on. So I'm just going to weasel my way down in between all this, put a little drop of to me extra thin in the hole where our steering shaft goes, or steering column, and then it will go right up underneath that little Y bracket that we've got there, and we'll just throw a little to me extra thin there to secure it, and just make sure everything's lined up, and I guess we're ready to go. That looks pretty good. Now, I try to check and make sure that everything is lined up before I walk off from it. I don't want anything being crooked. So, as you can see here, I hadn't really thought this out. The seat cushion doesn't really fit straight down in, because there are two little brackets, one on either side of the sides of the cab. So what I'm doing here is I'm just checking to see if I can get that in, because I want to paint these up separately. But it's not going to do me any good if I can't get them installed. So the steering column it's kind of a tight fit now that I've put the steering column in place. Now you could leave that out if you like, but I'm going to stick with leaving the steering column in, because I can get it in and out. And remember, we only have to make this operation once everything's painted, so I think we'll be okay. Yeah, it'll be fine. Trust me. Okay, so back to this seam where we've joined the firewall to the sides of the cab there. I'm pretty sure that seam is not supposed to be there, or it shouldn't be visible. So we're going to take and fill that. And we're going to use this Mr. Surfacer 500 for that. It does okay. Normally now, I will tell you that I oftentimes have to go back before sanding and put a second coat on. That way when I sand off the excess Mr. Surfacer, then there's plenty of it in the little groove or the gap or the seam that we're trying to fill. Because once Mr. Surfacer does dry, it does conform to the surface. And it will conform to that little seam that we're trying to cover up. So putting a little extra on there really helps in allowing us to fill that. Now we're going to have to wait until this dries completely before we're able to sand it off. But we need to go ahead and do it now and get this on there so it'll have plenty of time to dry, so that we're not being held up just in case we have to go back and do some touch-up filling there on that seam, because we don't want it to hold us up from attaching our grab handles and stuff. Okay, back to our instructions here. So we've just finished up, what was that, 53 and 54. As you can see, these steps go really quick. So step 55 is attaching the cab to the frame, and we're not going to do that yet because we're going to paint it separately. And then there's the fitting of the hood and our radiator guard, and then we do have a shifter there to put in, but we're going to leave it out because it's going to interfere with us putting the cab on and taking the cab back off. So we can go ahead and we're going to go ahead and put this grill or this radiator guard on because we've got some brackets there that it's going to need some attention. So here we go. It just simply sits right on top of the front cross member, and it's got two little grooves, or two little notches I should say, and two little tabs, one on either corner there, and that's it. So you can't get any easier than that. So what we'll do is we'll take some Tamiya Extra Thin and just put that in onto those little notches where the radiator guard goes. I keep wanting to call it a grill guard, but there's no grill. This is the grill. So, anyway, here we go. So we wanted this to sit at 90 degrees to the frame. It just sits straight up and down. And, of course, I mean, all the reference photos that I've seen, that's the way it goes. So that's the way we're going to do it. And as you can see, those braces, well, they don't really match up like they're supposed to. So we're going to let that set up so we can work on them braces later. So back to our instructions. Grill guards in place. Now we can just move on to the bed. And we're going to start working on the actual floor of the bed. So here it is. This is the floor of the bed, one big piece. And we have some slots along the front of the bed, and that's where the headboard goes. And then on the bottom, we have those areas where the storage compartments go. So that's the front, and obviously the other end's of the back, just in case. So this is the front bed support or cross member. It has those two little tabs on it. The three center ones are identical, so we don't have to worry about that. And then our rear cross member here has these four indents there for the hinges, and then we have some bolt detail on those. And of course that's going to face out. So I'm going to start with the three center ones, and we're just going to go ahead and set them into place. And there is a little bit of seam, mold seam to clean up on these, but it's not severe, so it's not that big of a deal. But I do recommend that you do clean that up so that you'll have a good contact surface here. And we'll just go ahead and put all three of these into place. And the only reason why I mentioned that is because some people seem to think that they don't need to actually clean that stuff up. And really, I mean, you do. You need to take care of that. Otherwise, it's going to throw off your assembly. So here we're just going to line these up because you can get these, the way they're molded, even though we cleaned up the mold seams on them, They do have a little bit of not positive setting at a 90 degree, so I want to make sure that those are straight. And then it's pretty much the same thing here. Just make sure that when you're doing the front cross member there, that those two little tabs that's on the front side of it are facing towards the cab. Okay, it's going to face forward. We don't want to flip them around because it would be facing the boxes, and that'll be a problem later on. So just make sure that they're forward. And then we just need to square it as well. And you guessed it, we have one more to put on, and we just want to make sure that we don't put it on backwards. Going to kind of need those 4 slots towards the rear there for our tailgate. The tailgate hinges, I should say. So we'll just cement that into place there. And we'll inspect it once again. We want to make sure that all these are vertical, just like I said before. If you have, even though you can't see, say, the 3 that's in the center, if they're leaning, that's going to be a problem for us because it has tabs that actually engage the frame. And if you look here on the frame, we have those little cutouts there where 4 of the 5 actually engage the frame, and that helps us with our alignment, and that's great. You know, it's a very positive thing. But we want to make sure that it all is going to line up correctly. So we do need to test fit this before, we walk away from the model. You don't want to come back tomorrow and then decide to test fit it because everything will be nice and solid then, and we're not going to be able to move anything without some difficulty, some greater effort. Okay, so with that checked, we're in good shape. Everything seems to line up nicely. And all we need to do now is to go ahead and attach the headboard. And the way ICM has laid this out, the metal straps face the inside. So we're just going to set it up there and run us some extra thin along the edge. And you're going to have to hold this for a second because it's a really fine edge that we've actually tried to cement up here. So I really think the best thing to do would be to take one of the sides, or even both sides, and help us kind of place it together as a jig, so we get that 90 degrees. And we're going to know for sure that everything is going to line up exactly as it's supposed to when we go to put the sides on. So it's important for me to actually mention that I am not gluing these or cementing these sides into place for our truck bed yet. We're just using it to get the fit correct. And it's actually a good thing that we're doing this now because there are little pins on those little cross members that we put on the bottom of the truck bed. And see that little pin? Well, I got my finger in the way. Sorry. So there's a little pin, and then there's little holes for those pins to slide into. And yeah, you can see the pin right there. So we have those pins, and then on the sides of the bed, you can see there's a little hole that those are supposed to fit into. And since everything is still basically pliable, we can go ahead and set that into place and make sure that everything lines up. So that was good for us, and that might have been a problem later on. I guess you could always cut them pins off, but if you make a mistake. But we're in good shape. Well, all right. I guess that's going to wrap it up for this video. We still got a lot of work to do. We need to take care of these braces here, these that hold our grill guard or radiator guard into place there. We're letting this set up so that it's nice and firm, and then we can kind of work on it. Now, with this one over here, came out of the package already bent like that, and then the one on the opposite side was just broken completely off. So yeah, so we still have that to do now. A reminder that our engine is not it's not cemented into place there, so we can take it out and paint it separately. We still got work to do on our cab. Some sanding there where we put that Mr. Surfacer 500 in. So we need to sand that down flush, and there's still going to be handles and stuff that we got to put on that. So that'll be in the next video as well. And of course, we started building our bed, and we could just take these sides off. We use those to get that front board here of our bed to be vertical, which is kind of what we want. And we got all of our bed rails on, but we still have to do our stowage boxes here that goes underneath the bed. Those have to be done. The sides still have to be done, and we still got our canvases to take care of. So that's it's actually quite a bit. And there's going to be some little modifications that we're going to try to make too. Try to bring the model up just a notch or two there to make it look more realistic. So that's it for this video. Special thanks to all my subscribers. Because of you guys, I keep making these videos, and I hope that you enjoyed this one. And if you're new to the channel and not a subscriber, hope today I earned your subscription. So until I see you guys again Friday, you guys stay safe.